How do you sort out the so-called jargon from real-world practices that work? Do the members of your organization find some business or technology advice utterly confusing? Welcome to Real Talk with Sam Holcman. In this program, we set the record straight, and in terms that business people and technology people can understand. Now, here is your host, Sam Holcman.
Welcome to this edition of Real Talk. I'm Sam Holcman. Thanks for tuning in today. And for our listeners, it's a secret. I'm going to provide you with the latest, yet to be announced, incredible technology that's going to replace everything that you've ever done before. Can you believe it? Only on this program are you going to hear this. And the miracle of miracles is the technology of the mainframe. Wait a minute. I thought it disappeared. Well, one of the things that some of us have is gray hair. And sometimes people with gray hair, I used to say gray beards, but in the world of technology today, there are people that don't have beards of any kind, which is absolutely fantastic, but a lot of us do have gray hair. And maybe we can teach the non-gray-haired people something about not running to the latest silver bullet and saying, oh my gosh, here it is. All you got to do is X, Y, Z, and you never have to work and think again. Now, what am I talking about? Well, it turns out that the latest headlines are regarding, get this, cooling computers using liquids. Oh my gosh, what an invention. It's been around for decades in the world of mainframes. Back to the IBM 158, IBM 360s, etc., etc. They've been using this cooling technology for a long time. Yeah, but what about AI? Oh, why don't we run AI, in quotes, on our mainframes? What do you mean? Well, guess what? It's a massive processor that's incredibly reliable, that's got, in some cases, the ability to hold terabytes of data and come back with virtually instantaneous responses. So let's take a quick look at both of these. First, this concept of cooling. And the organization that is leveraging this right now is none other than NVIDIA. Their processors, the GB200 server racks, are going to contain the next generation, or the generation called Blackwell chips. And it'll mainly be cooled with liquids circulated in tubes, snaking through the hardware rather than by air. Ooh, ah. Well, all I'm saying is, congratulations, NVIDIA. It's great. I have no issues with them at all. But you know what? Maybe some gray-haired people could have told you that a long time ago. So the first area, again, is looking at some of this technology that has been tried and true for literally decades and saying maybe there's a different way to do this. Now let's come back to the mainframe for just a moment and AI. Yes, running AI. Well, you know, mainframe's been around for decades and decades and decades. And what was it designed to do? Essentially handle a massively large data and process. Remember what we were called in the olden days? Data processing. You know what we're doing today? Processing data. And it's proving right now, not tomorrow, not 6 months from now, that it can run all this next generation artificial intelligence stuff right now. And what's fascinating is that what is being done in these organizations that are thinking well in advance of what possibly is in the press every day is the data is at the hardware source rather than in the cloud, which right away gives you an advantage. Processing speed, processing time, and of course cost, that's there. And what people are realizing is you can't go off to the cloud, do a search on something, then do some AI query because you just don't have the time for all of this stuff going on. But you've got these massive processing power engines right in your backyard. Of course, that assumes that you haven't thrown away your data centers. Maybe everything old is new again, or maybe some of the old stuff should be thought about. Wait a minute. What did Sam say? Thinking? No, we can't. We don't have time to think. We just have to do stuff that's there. So what we're talking about now is performing an inquiry, looking it up, and analyzing it in real time on the mainframe. And by the way, if you're following the biggest provider of mainframes, IBM, they just announced some of their sales, and it's up 6% over year. Guess what? Quietly. You don't hear that in the press very much. You don't hear that from the analysts very much, but you're hearing it on this program. I don't throw anything out. You know what's fashionable nowadays to me, and hopefully more and more people? Thinking. Why don't we think about this before we look at the next hype that's out there? Let's continue for just a few minutes here, okay? Now, this concept of mainframes, people have been talking about getting rid of these mainframes for I don't know how long, especially when we had all of this COVID stuff. Everybody is pointing fingers. And the issue that everybody keeps talking about is not actually the mainframe, but the programming languages. And you have all this wringing of hands. Well, you know what the issue is, Sam. We don't have enough COBOL programmers. They're all disappearing. Well, you know what we can do? Why don't we start training some people? Let's look at the universities and let's look at these other organizations and saying, what are you waiting for? And by the way, if you're interested as a technology person, maybe this is a field that you can look at. You can't write your own ticket, but you can possibly write a pretty good ticket if you have some COBOL skills. And by the way, it's not that hard to learn. And by the way, it may not be, quote, fashionable according to the technology press, but it could be pretty fashionable in your pocketbook. So in summary, gray hair people, if you're listening, just smile at this point and say, maybe there's something other people can learn. But you as an organization need to understand this. Let's think before we look at the next thing out there that's going to solve all the issues in technology. Because maybe what you need is to look in your backyard, because it's already there.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Talk. Be sure to join your host, Sam Holcman, again for another edition of our program. We'll have more real topics of discussion then.